Hello, my name is Harsh, and in this video I'm going to show you MongoDB sharding. So this is my architecture. I have one machine router which is going to be used to do sharding on MongoDB cluster and as well as do MongoDB operations. Then I have a config server here which is used to store all the configuration details of the sharding. And then I have two shards, CMPE281 and CMPE281 So both the shard currently have one cluster with 3 machines each. So on both the shards I have two different replication sets. For shard 1 I have CMPE281 replication set, and for shard 2 I have CMPE281 and also I have defined cluster roles for both the shards as well as the config server. So for config server the cluster role is config server, and for these two shards the cluster role is shard server. So now let me show you my EC2 dashboard. So here, as you can see, these 3 nodes form one cluster and shard 1, while these 3 nodes form the other cluster and shard 2. This is my config server and this is my router. So now let me show you my configuration changes by SSHing into the nodes. So as you can see, this is my one of the nodes in cluster 1 and shard 1. So these are the changes in my configuration file. This is the replication set name CMPE281 and the cluster role to shard server. These are the only changes I have made. Now let me show you the cluster status. So as you can see, all the 3 nodes are alive. Now let me show you for one of the nodes in another cluster and shard 2. So this is the node, and let me show you the configuration changes. So here's the replication set name CMPE281 the cluster role shard server, and let me show you cluster status. So as you can see, all the nodes are live here as well. Now let me show you the configuration server. So this is the one. Let me show you the changes in the configuration file. As you can see here, I have replication set name config01 and cluster role to config server. Now let me show you how the sharding is done. So for that I have already SSH'd into the router server, and I have already added one shard. So this is the list of commands that I have used. So I have started a Mongo server. I have already logged into the Mongo server. I have added one shard, as you can see here. So ss.add shard, and the IP of the master node. So as you can see here, if I do sh.status, I have CMPE281 shard with 3 machines already onto it. Now I'm going to show you how to add shard 2. So this is the command. Maybe this is not the primary node, so I need to hit the primary node. I'll do that again. SSH into the I will log into the Mongo server, and this time let me hit another IP. So let me try 6.196. Is the third IP. So let me copy paste this here, and I will try with the third IP over here, which is 6.214. So I figured out what the mistake was. So I was giving the wrong port number. Now let me try and add to shard 2. So as you can see, the shard is successfully added, and let me just check that with sh.status. And as you can see, both the shards are successfully added. Uh, both the shards have 3 IPs as described in the architecture. Now let me enable sharding. So I'm going to use CMPE281 database, and I'm going to do shard on CMPE281 database. So use CMPE281, then I'm going to enable sharding on CMPE281. Yes, so sharding is enabled. Now I am going to specify shard key. So on what basis the sharding is going to be done, I will specify that. So I am going to use BIOS database, and I am going to shard on the basis of _ID field in MongoDB database, which is automatically generated. So this command just says that I will shard on the basis of _ID, and it's showing OK1. So now let me specify what collection is to be sharded. Okay, so I will shard on the basis of _ID key and on CMPE281.BIOS collection. Now let me insert the data in the CMPE281 database. So I will take the data over here, and I will insert the data. It's showing not inserted. Let me just check what the error is. So let me try once again to insert the data in the database. Okay, let me check. So let me try to insert data in a new database and try sharding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert new data in database BIOS1 and check. So I will use CMPE281, and then I will do sharding on shard collection BIOS1. I specify shard collection. Now I'm going to switch to CMPE281 again and try to insert data in BIOS1. So let me try once again, and I think I figured out what the error is. So what I'm going to do is, instead of ID, I'm going to specify _ID. Okay, so it's saying it's already enabled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that for another database collection, say BIOS2. So what I will first enable BIOS2 over here. Okay, so shard collection sharding is enabled on shard collection BIOS2. Now let me just get data. So let me just insert data in BIOS2. Yeah, so now it's inserted. Now let me just check whether sharding is done or not. So for that, I will just do dp.bios2.get shard distribution. As you can see here, CMPE281 contains 44% of the data, while CMPE281 contains 55% of the data. So as you can see, the sharding is already done. So for BIOS and BIOS 1, I got what the error is. So here I was specifying ID hashed, whereas I was doing sharding on underscore ID. So that was the mistake, and I figured it out, and as you can see here, the sharding is properly done now, with 45% of the data in CMPE281 and 55% of the data in CMPE281 too. Hello, so for my extra credit, I'm going to create a MongoDB cluster on Docker. So I've already SSH'd into my EC2 instance, and I have Docker already installed on it. So I'll show you. So for building a MongoDB cluster, first I need a Mongo image. So I'm going to download a Mongo image. Meanwhile, I will also create a network where I will run my 3 Mongo containers. So let me just create a network. As you can see, the network is successfully created, MongoDB cluster. Now I'm going to run 3 containers, Mongo A, Mongo B and Mongo C. One thing to note is that while creating 3 containers, I have also specified my replication set, which is going to be used for the cluster, and so I'll show you 3 containers running. As you can see, my Mongo A, Mongo B and Mongo C containers are already running. Now I will create a cluster, so I will exec into the Mongo A container. I will initiate a cluster, and if I do rs.status, you can see primary node has been created. Now I will add the remaining 2 containers to my Mongo cluster, and it has been created, and I will add the 3rd container as well. Now if I do rs.status, you can see that I have 3 members and all of them are alive. So I will show you if the data is replicated correctly or not. So I'm going to insert data in my CMPE281 database, and I will insert a document with name Harsh, and I will show you that it's correctly inserted. As you can see, it's correctly inserted. Now let's check if the replication is correctly done or not. So I will exit my primary node, and I will exec into another 2 containers and check if the data is replicated. I will use CMPE281. I'll do rs.slave OK to query, and I will find db.names.find. And as you can see, the data is correctly replicated. Now let us check for 3rd container as well. As you can see, the data is replicated over all the 3 containers. Now let us check how the Mongo cluster behaves when I create a network partition. So in order to create a network partition, I will shut down my primary container and let's observe what the behavior is. So I will stop my primary node Mongo A, and now let me exec into my MongoDB container. Let me do rs.slave OK. Let me do rs.status. As you can see, the container Mongo is not reachable but is unhealthy. But it has selected a new primary, which is the Mongo C container, and Mongo B and Mongo C container are in sync. So even if I create a network partition, the Mongo database is still consistent and in sync. I will show that by doing rs.print slave replication info. And as you can see, one of Mongo B is in sync, but Mongo A is behind the cluster. So I have successfully created replication and partition tolerance on Docker as well for MongoDB. Thank you for watching the video.